Well, welcome. This is going to be a very quick lesson, but I think it's an important one. I want to sort of talk about how I prepare for a trip or a little travel, maybe getaway. I love the idea of planning. I like thinking through some ideas. I'm not very good at scheduling like down to the day. Okay, day one here, day two here, or afternoon at 2 p.m. I'll be here. I have a buddy I travel with who's very good at that part. What I like is the idea of thinking through the project. What is it that I want to do? What do I want to end up? What can I do that's going to further my photography career, grow as a photographer and as an artist, fulfill my vision as a creative person, and just have a lot of fun. So I love that idea of planning a trip. My wife and I are going to be going up through Yosemite. We got a couple nights in Yosemite, and then on up the coast. We got a wedding in Seattle, and then we're going to come back down. It's about a 2-week trip. And so in my mind, I'm already thinking about, okay, what is it that I want to do? What do we want to key on? What are some ideas that, now I'm with my wife, I have to be sensitive. She's not a photographer, so she does my social media stuff, and then she's always like, let's do some more social media. I'm like, I want to take a picture over here. The light's perfect. So, but we have a good time together, but I love planning. So let me go through a couple key ideas of what I think about when I go to plan a trip and what I think I could pass on to you. Some of the stuff is going to be, oh yeah, Joel, that's standard approach. But I want to encourage you more than anything because I think we all need encouragement. And so one of my gifts, I think, is getting people excited about creating. And so this is a little more on that session, idea of getting you out in the field. So the very first thing I always think about is work in a series. Now, I was not raised or educated as a photojournalist. I had friends that were in the photojournalism department in college. In high school, I did work for the yearbook and stuff, but it wasn't really until college that I got serious about photography. And I went to the fine art side, and I had friends that were the photojournalists. One of the things I learned when I did a book on the Navajo, so I was 33 years old when I did a coffee table book on the Navajo Indians up in northern Arizona. And it was the first time that I had sort of worked on a complete concept or book project, but with an end result that was very defined, meaning portraits of the Navajo people, and then I did some landscapes with their surrounding environments. And that was really difficult for me, and I'll tell you why it was really difficult, and you may have found this to be true too. When you take an idea, and you say, I'm going to key on that idea, so work in a series, you have to pick an idea that will allow you to go back and revisit it for the long time. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it's the idea of repeating something and going back to it. Working in a series can be, if you pick the wrong series, you'll get tired of it very quickly. Even if you pick the right series, it almost gets to be where you're like, yeah, okay, I've done this. I mean, how many times I have to photograph this bridge with a 5-minute exposure to get it right? Or a concept if you're doing long exposures, you got to repeat it. And so it was hard for my personality to stick with one thing for any length of time. So the Navajo book project was a 2-year venture, 2 years in the field, 400 nights out of over 2 years. And living out of a Volkswagen van, basically. No hotels. And when I went to Taco Bell was a big treat. I was so broke. I mean, it didn't have much of a budget. So it got old pretty quick, and I had to finish the project. So, I had to buckle down and do it. But it was difficult to stick with one idea and one concept for a long period of time. Since that project, I've been able to do and sort of work in a series easier. So that was a great learning experience for me. So that discipline has paid off. And I talk to people, they say, oh, you did a cocktail book. And where is it? I'm like, well, it's around. But what came out of that book project more than the book was that I matured in a lot of ways, matured as a human being in dealing with publishers, fighting for what I set out to do. I had some issues with the publisher, changing everything on me at the last minute, trying to bring another photographer in. It was terrible. And then understanding the publishing industry was a really good education for me. Books, coffee table books. But what really taught me was I stuck with the project all the way through. So I had to have discipline to do that, to see it through. Sticking with one idea for a long period of time, dealing with people and interacting with and recruiting subjects. Oh my gosh, that was like, it was brutal. Go up to a Navajo person and say, hey, I want to take your picture. It's not an easy thing. Maybe, 30 years later, it's easier today than it was back when I was doing it, but it's still hard to approach anybody and get permission to do a portrait of them. And so I had to learn that skill set too. And I've carried all those things on with me through my careers. But working in a series was one of the biggest single things that I learned that I still think about. So when I go on a trip, I think, okay, what is it that I want to do, right? What is it that excites me to go and stick with something through a series? I did a series of lighthouses back in the early days. I did Americana, the Hardy Project across America, 100 days straight. Route 66, I haven't done a lot of Route 66. I have a buddy who does a lot on, he's got like 4 or 5 books on Route 66, Carrick James. Old Barns, I went up a buddy, a couple years ago, we did Old Barns and stuff up in Virginia, drove around for, about 10 days. We had a blast. Windmills, I'm out in the, cowboy country and I see a windmill and I'm like, oh, that's a perfect shot. And then, of course, I did this whole masterclass on New York City. So I've also gone to Barcelona. I've done some other cities I've concentrated on. I did a whole series of images, and I was going to show you guys all these images. And I thought, well, look, this is, it's getting too much of, pulling all this stuff together for you guys. You can find a lot of that stuff on my website, portfolio.joelgrimes.com. But I used backgrounds in England. I shot the palaces, older, like in Oxford. I went into Oxford, the colleges, and I shot a whole bunch of backgrounds there. I used those backgrounds, but I went for 2 weeks specifically with getting backgrounds, but more of the, I would call it the Renaissance, Baroque, the sort of that time period of backgrounds. In Barcelona, it was more Gothic, a little edgier, and only spent about 4 or 5 days there, and would go back in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity. So when I go out, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm looking for. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're walking along and you're photographing windmills and you see this incredible old barn that you go, well, I'm not doing barns, so I'm going to pass that up. If it's the shot, get it. But having a concentrated goal and a series gives you direction. And I would say that's probably the biggest key, is that you get your route and you say, I'm going to go up the coast and I'm going to do lighthouses. That's what I did. And some lighthouses were not very exciting. Some were really exciting. And so that series drove me down roads that I would probably never go on had I not had a series. In that, I found some pretty cool things that I photographed that weren't lighthouses. And I went with a buddy. We had a blast. And so work in a series and get an idea that you can go and concentrate on. This also requires homework. So I say, do your homework or do your research or get on the web. Now we have the web, I used to get out a map and look at my route and say, oh, I'm going past Yosemite. All right, maybe I'll stop at Yosemite. The beautiful thing about having the internet is that we can go and look at images. So when I say do your homework, you can pull a bunch of images of a certain area. So let's say you're going to Yosemite, or not, that's not urban, but you're going to San Francisco and you say, I want to photograph the city of San Francisco. Of course, be careful today. It's not what it used to be. But you go online and you look and you say, look at this angle of this photographer did of this bridge going right down here. You've got the San Francisco skyline, you've got the Golden Gate Bridge, and he or she had to be right here somewhere. So you get your Google map out and you go, oh, there's the road that goes, there's an overlook right there. So you mark it, you say, okay, I'm gonna do that. It could be an evening shot or maybe it's a morning shot too. You might try both, but it gives you at least a direction that's in addition to your series of planning out your trip. Once again, I'm a wing it kind of person. So I might get to San Francisco and I say, okay, it's kind of cloudy. That might be a better time to go out over here. And it's blue skies. Okay, this shot here looks like a good blue sky shot. So I'm gonna go there instead of going by day necessarily. I go by sort of, we're gonna talk about that in a minute about the weather. But do your homework. And I have done this too. And my wife's got a little printer that we use for paper, like doing printouts of stuff. Our phone is really our smartphones are really the best tool ever. You can make notes and you can drop in photos and all that. But sometimes I'll actually do a printout so that it's just sitting on my front seat and I can just kind of flip through it and go, okay, check mark. But the phone is a great way to organize what you want to do in terms of that, the locations and all that. So do your homework. And I love doing that. It's kind of a fun thing because it's research and it's planning. I love that. So make a list of the standard classic locations that have the grand master overviews. Okay, so you say, this shot has been done 1,000 times from this point right here. Why not do that? So I know photographers say, oh, it's already been done, I'm not going there. Well, it wasn't done by me. It wasn't done maybe by you. So I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna give it an approach and see what the light looks like and maybe get ideas and then build on it. We have, as we've been talking about, newer tools today to shoot than we did, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Back when I was shooting film, I look at my film stuff and I go, ugh. I mean, the quality's not there compared to what we have today. 45 megapixels, resolution's incredible. All the bells and whistles that I can do to make an incredible photograph. So I'm gonna repeat that classic shot and see what I get. Now it may be that I fail at it, but at least I give it a shot and I learned something from it. So I might come back and revisit it, but at least I have that. All right, so go look on the internet, find the classic shots. There's 500px. There's just type in the location, go into Google and hit images, and then it'll give you a flood of images. You might dive in a little deeper, and there might be some other resources that you can go and look into for those classic pictures. There's other, like 500px. Go in to Pinterest or something, and maybe there might be another resource that you can go in and take a look. It doesn't hurt also to go to the classics. Now, you'll see this shot. I haven't done it for you guys yet. I'm looking on down 42nd Avenue. I don't believe I've showed you that yet. I stood up there for like 3 hours because I got in position, and then there was other photographers, and I'm like, I'm dead center. I'm not letting you get my spot. There were a couple of photographers that came up and said, can I just get a quick shot? I'm like, absolutely. Moved my tripod, they shot, and I put back in. I want to be kind and courteous to them. They were not probably doing long exposures and stuff like I was doing. But I stood my ground and one shot. Now, that shot with that bridge was shot back, I think, in the 60s with some fashion, beautiful fashion models walking across. You can see that. I've come across it a number of times. Maybe it was Irving Penn or someone did it. And I'm like, I know where that's at. I was standing right there. And it's a spot that's been used over the years for the classic images that we know today. So it's nothing wrong with going back to those. The second thing I do is I look for something that's unusual, a location that's unusual. And so a lot of times what I do is I will go to Google Maps and then I'll go to satellite and I'll spin around. And so, for example, let's say I'm looking for old pylons out in the water shooting, well, we found those in New York. It's pretty easy, there's a spot there. But let's say I came across a picture, maybe some photographers don't tell you where it's at. You're like, okay, where is that at? And you go and you find the pylons. And I've gone up the coast and I'll see an old section way out there, an old bridge. And I'm like, how do I get out there? Sometimes you got to stop. You got to walk 2-3 miles. I bought recently, I wasn't able to use it in New York. I bought an electric little scooter that folds up. You can put it back in your trunk, car, or whatever. And then you get to a location, pop it up. And the one I bought has a little bit heavier duty suspension and whatever for dirt roads. It goes 50-mile range, you know, it goes too fast, but you don't need to go that fast. Just helps you get out to some location and back. I have electric assist bike that my wife and we use all the time. And sometimes you can put that on the back of your SUV or whatever, your car, and then go out and shoot and then pop that bike off and then take off and go down areas that maybe would take you too long to walk to. And especially if you come back, if it's a 2-hour hike or something, you might be coming back in the dark. And so this will speed that up. I did that when I did the landscape master class. We rented bikes into Zion and came back. After all the buses and everything shut down, we were able to stay up into the Virgin River while everyone else left. And so we had the whole place to ourselves because we had electric bikes to come back. So, but do something that's unusual. So find a location that, you know, maybe no one's ever done before, or very few people have even thought about doing it. The other thing too is when I look at a classic overview shot that's been done many times, I look at the shot and I go, that was not a 4-minute exposure. What would happen if you did that in a 4-minute exposure? So I look for unusual ways to approach a shot that's been done before, and then it might offer something new to the viewers that they haven't seen before, and something you want to put on your wall. So when I talk about plotting out the best time of day, I think we all know, as a general rule, early morning, late light. Okay, we know that. And we're going to do a shot. I'm going to show you high noon. That's coming up. And then the results of that, and you go, hey, you know, that's not bad. High noon. That's pretty amazing, right? And some of the techniques I'm doing to make a high noon shot look like you want to put it on your wall, or at least I think I would put it on my wall. But you plan it out. And so, as I said, I'm not as organized as some people, but you might go, this only is a morning shot. So then you say, okay, write down morning shot. My friend Carrick, who I talk about, we went to college together and we've been at each other's weddings. We've followed each other's careers. He has a database of shots. So I'll call him up and I'll say, I'm going to Torrewheap on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. What time of year is best? And he'd go, hold on a second. Well, that's in April. Really? How do you know? Because I've been there in April, I've been there in June, I've been there in, you know, he's been there enough times. So he goes, if you really want that sun in the right spot, you need to do early spring or whatever. And that's great. That helps me out a lot. So time of day or time of year is critical. Now, the Urban Landscape Masterclass that I filmed was done when there was really no leaves on the trees. It was early, say early spring, before it was like 2 weeks later, it started, you know, getting green. And it was just happened that my son was available, I was available, and I knew it was going to be early. And it was cold. You could see me in jackets, and sometimes it got down to 33 degrees, I think it was one day. So it was a little bit chilly. I would have preferred to maybe have postponed that trip a couple weeks, maybe a month, to really get the prime time of the leaves and stuff. But it's not a perfect world. So, but if I was to go back again, I would this time say, okay, I'm not getting there unless Central Park and all the trees, even that 42nd Street looking down, there's big sets of trees on your left and right. And I shot through dead branches, and it just, I know there's a better shot there if it's got leaves on the trees. And so time of day, time of year is important. And so think about that. Factor in the weather. Now, I don't really like super cold weather. I would rather prefer hot weather. So, okay. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm living in Buckeye, Arizona now. Well, actually, we just moved to Wickenburg. My brain's fried here. So it's desert. I like desert. I like heat. I can handle the heat. The cold, I don't do very well in. But factor the weather, and what I mean by that is, like I'm trying to get back up to Oak Creek Canyon up in Sedona, and I've been twice this year. I've been a number of times, but twice this year, and no clouds in the sky. So I can't really shoot the soft water bouncing over the rocks unless there's a late day, so I can do that. But that's really gives me a very small window of time to do that because the sun comes down the canyon, but yet, you know, I want soft light. So if I look out and I see, oh, there's clouds up in, or I look at the weather, you know, clouds in Sedona. I'll take that 2.5 hour drive to get up there and do some beautiful waterfall shots. So the weather I actually want drama. I want clouds. I want, well, not rain. It's hard to photograph in the rain, but I think you get what I'm saying, is weather is a good thing, generally. Now, wind is a challenge. And last fall, I went up to, no, it was this spring, I went up to Anzo Borrego, if I pronounce that right. It's near the Salton Sea in California. It's up on the desert side. And I got weather, incredible. Snow on the mountains, everything. But the wind was howling. 35-mile-an-hour constant wind for 3-4 days. I was ready to come home before, you know, I was hoping to stay a little longer, but I just couldn't do it. I got beat up. The wind. It wasn't really the cold. Well, the wind, because you get colder when the wind blows, but it was just that constant, you know, and then I was sleeping in my car out in the middle of the desert and the whole thing was shaking all night long. It was not fun. All right. So take a risk on pushing the creative side to your photography. So that adds another dimension to the final product when you push it a little bit and you say, yeah, you know, the standard shot's great, but and I did a whole thing years ago where I shot the Golden Gate Bridge at high noon, the way a tourist would. So, you know, 1/25th at f/16 ISO 100 with a standard lens. And then I shot it with a 10-stop ND filter. I stacked 20 images together to make a 10-minute exposure, I think it was. No, 5-minute exposure. No, 20 to 10 minutes. So 20 exposures, 10-minute exposure, 30 seconds. So, and I put it all together and it was an incredible shot. People go, wow. Because I'm pushing I got the tools, the creative part of it. I'm pushing the limit a little bit, which gives me a better end result. All right, so we're almost done here. Revisit the same location over and over again. I hope you understand the value of that. So when you'll see me go down to Dumbo on the Brickland side, and I photographed the Manhattan Bridge like 5 times. We had fog one day, or rain, you know, clouds, foggy, and we did it morning, we did afternoon, we did it high noon. We did a bunch of stuff where I used the same bridge a couple times, but with each time I get a little better at it. Shot at night once, midnight, and got some really cool stuff. So by going back to the same location, so I've been to Torweep, I mentioned that, in the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Incredible, 60-mile dirt road, you get out there, it's just incredible. You have to, if you're gonna spend the night, you have to get a permit, but it's an overview that it'll take your breath away. It's just, you've seen the pictures of it, I'm sure. The point is, maybe I'll drop a picture in there if I can find it, of what I did. The point is, I revisit that now. See, I think I've been there 3 times, 2 or 3 times. And so with each time I revisit it, I approach it a little bit different, a little bit wiser, a little bit more mature, and my direction is a little bit clearer. And so by revisiting something, that is a good thing. Last thing I'm going to say, and I just had a neighbor come up to me. He's a retired Air Force pilot, airline pilot. He got into photography now, and he's coming over here asking me questions, and he was asking me some stuff. But the whole thing, after he got through talking, I said, all right, let me tell you what I've learned 40 years of doing this. Create a workflow that won't kill your enthusiasm to keep you from repeating the process over and over again. But when it comes to carrying your gear out into the wilds or down the streets, you know, in New York, I carried that backpack, let's see, I think it's 7, 8 days straight. We started in the morning, went to, late light, even into the evening. So I had about a 35-pound backpack on me for all that time, right? I'm 64 years old. And by noon, I'm like, oh, this thing's getting heavy. And by 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I'm like, oh, I got to take this thing off my back. So I had a lot of lenses in there. So when you talk about workflow, meaning that if you know you're going to hike a long distance or carry a camera for a long period of time, you want to make sure that you don't go and carry too much, because then you're going to go, this is no fun. And then you go, I don't want to go out. I'm tired. It killed me. And the other thing too is whether carrying weight or being thrown out of places. I get thrown out a lot, and it kind of gets to you after a while. It's like, oh, someone yells at you. It's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, I'm out of here. You don't have to yell at me. Don't do something that's going to kill your enthusiasm. Plan it out. And I talk about when I do strobes. I had an assistant for 20 years, same guy. And when I was younger and he was younger, we would have a campaign or something to do. We had a model and art director and everything. And I'd look out, we'd pull up in the desert somewhere to do a portrait. I look out and I see these boulders that's, a quarter mile away. And I've got light stands, sandbags. We got 300, 400 pounds of gear. And I go, that's a perfect location. Let's do it. And we're like dragging our tongues in the dirt, getting all that stuff out there, shoot the shot. And then with time, I would look at that and go, is there some rocks that are a little bit closer? And we'd laugh because, I realized that if I go and try to do what I did when I was 25, I'm going to get burnt out on it. It's going to kill me, and then I'm going to give up. So I look at things as realistic as possible and say, yeah, okay, I can do that. I can carry a backpack of 35 pounds for 3 hours, but 9 hours, that might be too much, or whatever it is. My point is, I want you to attain the enthusiasm for the long haul. Does that make sense? And then you'll keep doing this and keep creating incredible images. And so that is my goal for you. So with that, we're going to continue on. I hope this helps you. Again, a lot of stuff you probably already know, and I'm a good talker, as my wife always says, but I think some of this stuff might encourage you. So we're going to keep at it. All right, we're scouting right now. It's really noisy. We got the subways going over the top of us. This is my Manhattan Bridge shot right here. We're gonna try to do this a couple times over the week, do some night stuff. We're gonna scout over here and look at it going back toward the city this direction. Look at this. Now we've got the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, Manhattan in the background. We got water in the foreground. This is perfect. This is a perfect location. Yeah, beautiful shot right here. All right, so here's a perfect scenario. High noon, worst time of day to shoot. I'm going to probably do this in black and white, add some grungy treatment to it. But I've got my 24 shifted all the way up. but it's not as wide as I would like, right? So I'm combining both a nodal point system to get a pano with a tilt shift. So I have it straight up, then I shift it left and right to get a little extra canvas, but still keeping all my parallel lines straight up and down. So it's really combining both the nodal point pano system with a tilt shift. Absolutely perfect scenario for that. Well, let's continue to talk about tilt shift lenses and pano rig, the pano shooting this, multiple images and stitching them together. Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I get a lot of people asking about this, and I think probably been able to encourage a lot of people to go in this direction. But the first thing I would say is that you don't have to do this to go out and create beautiful images. You can shoot your camera, even a crop sensor camera, and make beautiful pictures, make a living with your camera, sell them, make fine art prints. When you step up, say, from a crop sensor to a full frame sensor, there's some things that happen. One is a 24 millimeter lens on a crop sensor is going to be different than a 24 millimeter lens, say, on a full sensor. And when you take a 24 millimeter on a full sensor and stitch it in, say, 3 positions, you get a different angle of view, which can be good or bad. So there's some pluses and some minuses to doing this rig. The biggest minus is you've got to go and stitch in this in multiple stages, which is kind of a pain, right? I mean, it's more work. Now, why would I do that? Well, the main reason that I started out with the pano slider back in, I think it was almost around 2000 or 2003, I can't remember exactly, early on. Before there was even a program on the Macintosh side to stitch the images together, I actually stitched them by hand. Brought them in, I tried to register them. It was before auto align, and it was very painstaking, and it took a long time. What happened is when at the time I had an 11 megapixel camera, and I was doing these strobed cactus in the field, strobed saguaros and yuccas and whatever, and I was stitching and strobing all out in the desert, creating some fine art images for myself originally. But what happened was Arizona Highways Magazine, which I grew up with, if you know that magazine, it's a prestigious magazine in Arizona, and people subscribe to that from all over the world, really. And I grew up with that magazine. I always wanted to get in it. But I got in it first time was through my Navajo series. But they picked up those images that I did digitally. And I was the first to ever have a digital cover on Arizona Highways Magazine. And when I told the editor, I said, he said, well, what kind of camera did you shoot? What film camera? And I said, well, it was actually digital. What? We don't accept digital. At that time, he didn't. I convinced him because I was stitching and I was making bigger megapixels. I was able to get on the cover and a 12-page spread of my cactus images. Those images are still selling. They're in fine art in offices in Phoenix and whatever. And so I was ahead of the game a bit because I went to the extra steps to create a bigger capture, more megapixels. And so that started me out. This is about $110, maybe now a little more. The first one I had, the first one is all beat up. I think it's in a drawer somewhere. I purchased another one, but they're not very expensive to get started. So this is how you can start right here. Eventually I got a pano. I actually have the bigger pano. My son borrowed it. He's doing car shoots in LA. And this is more of a kind of a compact system. You throw it in your backpack and you can carry it around. The bigger one gets a little heavy. So the pano is what it does is I'm going to take, let's say, for example, the simplest, I take a middle shot, a left and right. Then I go and I stitch those together in Photo Merge mainly. I also use PT GUI is a program. It's about $100 or so. Maybe it's a little bit more now. I've upgraded about 3 or 4 times on it over the last 20 years. it will, if you get a complicated scenario, it does a better job than PhotoMerge inside of Photoshop. However, PhotoMerge does about 98% of everything I do is in PhotoMerge, so it works pretty well. Especially if I'm using my tilt shift lenses and shifting, getting 3 exposures or 2 if I do a pano. PhotoMerge like that. So getting a bigger megapixel capture is my main goal. The second goal that I have is that it gives me a bigger canvas, but with the same perspective of the lens you're using. So let's say I put on a 24mm lens and I shoot, say like this, a vertical shot like this. And I shift left and right. What I'm doing is I'm getting the same perspective that a 24mm gives me, but I get a wider angle of view. So why is that important? Well, let's say I was doing an interior of architectural, and a lot of architect photographers know this, and I've been teaching this for years too. And I've had architecture photographers that I've coached, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" So let's say I have this 24 tilt shift, and I set up, and I have an interior, and I have a couch or a chair or something in the foreground. If I go to my 17 tilt shift because I want a wider angle view, that couch and that chair or whatever is going to be distorted. It's going to be a little bit more elongated perspective-wise. But if I have a 24, let's say I like that, but I need a wider angle. And so when I shift left and right and then stitch, I get that canvas, but and it gives me a wider palette angle of view, but the same perspective. So I do that even for portraits, where I have a 90mm tilt shift lens, and I get a 90mm perspective, but when I shift it, I get about a 50mm angle of view. Pretty incredible, and I've done lots of tutorials on that and showing that example, especially for Canon. I do that in their booth when I was doing the big expos and stuff. So that's what gives me one extra advantage over, let's say my competition, but other people out in the field that I'm doing something and they scratch their head and go, "How did you get that shot?" Well, I used my 24 and I shifted and I got a 17mm perspective angle of view, but a 24mm perspective. I get confused with all these terms. So there's 2 reasons why I do that. It is more time consuming, and for my personality, I don't mind that because I shot a large format. Here's a 5x7, 4x5 camera, film camera in the day, and it's very time consuming. And sometimes I like that slowing it down. I have to think through the process. And I kind of like that with the tilt shift lenses. It gives me a little bit of a, I'm not going click, 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 click. I have to generally put it on a tripod and go through the steps. So that is the 3 main reasons, I guess, why I use a pano system and tilt shift lenses. So I call this the poor man's way of doing stitching, because you can just use your camera. I have the Really Right Stuff L bracket, which you more than likely need if you're going to be doing verticals. You can get the little plate that goes on here. That's like $30. And you can do the camera in this position and do some stitching left and right. You could probably do up and down too. Don't normally do it that way, but this is, again, fairly inexpensive. So we put this on the tripod. I got my little, what is this called? The Platey pod right here. I think I explained that in one of my videos. And then I put this on here. There's all the little guides so that you put it dead center on the plate and on the camera. So let's tighten that down. Oops, I didn't get it on there. Let's try that again. I don't have my glasses on, and so I'm not able to see very well. All right, tighten this down. So I have a little line there. The 2 lines line up, so that's good news. And let's say I put it at 24mm right there. And on here, I don't have my glasses, see, my 15 to 35 lens says that at 24 millimeter, I need to be at my 130 mark. So my 130 mark is right there. So I slide, and there's a little dead center point there. I lock it down, and then let's see if I can loosen this up a little bit. And then I will, well, I'll shift it left and right. And hope this doesn't tip over here because I'm really far back on it. But normally I'm on a tripod. And then I can get my parallax perfectly lined up for the program. To find the nodal point for each lens, and I have, like for this lens, I have 3 marks. I have the 15 millimeter mark, I have the 24 millimeter mark, and I have the 35 millimeter mark as my 3 positions. And so that's close enough. So it doesn't have to be 100% exact on your nodal point, because when you do your nodal point, there's a little bit of an error in there. So, it's like when I do my test. So it's not an exact science. If you really want to do an exact science, for maybe if you're a scientist and you want to, I don't know, for whatever reason, you might get a little more in depth. But to find your nodal point of your lens, what I normally do I do it in the horizontal position. Okay, let's get it back centered here. And what I do is I take 2 straight up and down objects to align together. So normally what I do is a light stand, and it doesn't matter the distance. Like say 4 or 5 feet in front of you, and then I use like a door jamb or something could be a tree. I could use a twig. I've done that in the field where I have a stick, a twig, and a tree. And when you spin this, let's see if I can loosen this up here. When you spin this side to side, what happens is, if your nodal point isn't correct, your foreground object, which is your light stand, and your door jamb in the back, will do this. So what I do is I just loosen this up, and I slide my camera along here until I get to the position where when I'm spinning, those 2 things don't move. Okay, so that's how you discover your nodal point. I've done complete tutorials on how to get your nodal point with live view and all that stuff. The thing is because I've done it like probably 10 times, I've got it on video, I think a YouTube video. There are so many YouTube videos now that explain that and Really Right Stuff, the company that builds this, they have their own tutorials, really good tutorials, go through and explain how to do it. So I'm not going to go into too much depth, but it's not as difficult as you would think. Once you get those 2 things lined up dead center, you spin them and you slide it until they stop moving. And then you go, okay, that's my mark, and I make a note of it. All right, so that is the pano. Now, this rig here is going to give me a 3-way axis pano. So in this case, I just do a row. I just do I can do maybe 5. I go 5, click, 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 click. Maybe at the Grand Canyon, I shoot a whole pano. I'll probably end up with 3. I end up with with a 45 megapixel camera. I get to be about double. So, because you got overlap. So, if you're 45 megapixels, you get around 100 to 120 megapixel capture with a 3. With a 5, you can increase it to maybe 200 megapixel capture. If you do rows, like this is going to be a 3-axis scenario, you can do say 3 rows. And I've got a Harley Davidson shot behind me here that I did in, I think, 5 stitches in 3 rows. So I ended up with like a 400 megapixel capture. And I used this little rig, or actually it was the bigger one. And Adobe, in one of their trade shows, ran that print. I'll see if I can put it up for you. They ran that at 10 feet by 8 feet in a display print in one of their booths. And so, and that was with it was with a 50 megapixel camera. But the point is that they heard about that print or that image, and then they called me and said, "Oh, look, we heard about that. Can we run it?" And so, and when I do campaigns for like car shoots for Fiat Chrysler Automotive, they ran those images huge, and I was doing, everything was stitched. So I did a whole campaign, all stitched, and they loved the files. So they were, at that time, I was getting about between 120, 30 to 200 megapixel files. And the largest medium format camera at the time was 100 megapixels. And most of them were 50, but there was a few that were out there, Phase One and Hasselblad and whatever had 100 megapixel. I was exceeding the megapixels that that any medium format camera could do at the time, unless they stitched, of course. But the point is when I hand those files to the art director, they were like extremely happy. So that's why I go to the extra steps to give myself a bit of a jump up with my competition. And when the art director, said, "Hey, these are going to be huge prints. Do you have medium format?" I said, "I got something better than medium format," and used this system. So with this, what I do is we put this on here, and you'll see me in the field using this. Okay, and so let's see, we'll put it right there. This little rig may not hold up when I'm doing, and I have a little piece of tape here that I can just slide this on very quickly. So it's broken down, and if it's not, I have to line up the lens right over this. So I'll show you that in a second. So then I put this on here like this. Then I get my camera. Whoops, I put it on backwards. And then let's say I'm going to go vertical. Then I would put it like this. I'm not sure if I'm on the dead center there. And then you see me in the field doing this. I'll adjust this just in case I got to go dead center. I'm going to open it up a little bit more here. Like right there. So it's right over my knob. And you can do live view and you can look down and you can see if this little knob here is dead center in my frame here. And so that tells me I'm good there. And then now I have the ability to go up and down, side to side, and stitch. And so it's a pretty good little rig here. And you're adding a lot of, it's probably not as stable as if I had the camera right over the tripod. I mean, I gotta think about that if the wind's blowing and things like that. So just a side note, because someone may go, well, that's not as stable. Well, that's true, it's not. So let's put a tilt shift in. Oh, I don't have my, my adapter. Hold on. So here are my two adapters. I have the original adapter, which came with the well, this is not the original. This has the drop-in filter. Here's the original one. And I first got the R body. I got one of these, and that gave me the ability to put an EF lens on to a mirrorless camera, the R camera. So let's do that. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. They're both the same, except this one has the drop-in filter. So let's just do that I'm gonna show you that. So let's put this on here, and I don't have my glasses. Let's take this lens off here. And now I have all sorts of caps and everything. I gotta make sure I cover up my lenses, even though I'm in a studio environment here. I always do that. Okay, without glasses. And plus I'm colorblind, and every time I look for a red dot, I don't really see the red dot very well. So I should talk to Canon about that. All right, so let's go with the standard approach to tilt shift. And well, we did it in the video, it was like this, okay? So we start out maybe like this. And I can go side to side. So if you can see that side to side this way, I can hit this little button here, spin it, go up and down. So up and down. So this lens has a bigger coverage circle than, say, this lens. This barely covers the full frame sensor. Okay, that's the way they design lenses. So this is actually like a medium format lens in a way, because it's covering a big circle. And so what you're doing is you're just shifting the circle up and down within around the sensor. So, and you can go and you can go on an angle here too, which I don't do. But, and then you can tilt this lens for the ability to do your depth of field, which I never do because now I have stack focus. So with this, now I can raise this up so that my buildings, the lines are they're parallel. They're not tilting backwards. Sometimes I get in a situation where I raise it all the way up and it's just not quite, I don't have the top of the building, and I'll just do a little bit back, tilt the camera itself so the plane is not perfectly straight. And then in Photoshop, I will straighten it out just a little bit. So you're bending pixels and moving things around, which is, you know, there's a little bit of a latitude there, but you know, you want to keep it as straight as possible. So when I do the side by side, I do both the nodal point and the tilt shift at the same time. This is kind of the best of both worlds. And so I raise it up, as you saw. Let's spin this like this. And then I have a pretty, you know, narrow angle of view, and then I'm moving to the left and the right, and then I'm putting all three of those together to get one final image, but all my lines are parallax, are perfectly lined up. The bridge and all the city buildings in the background. And so there you have sort of a combination of the pano and the tilt shifts. Now, I get an email probably twice a month, maybe even more, when someone will say, I can only buy one lens, tilt shift lens. Which should I get? The 17, which is absolutely stunning, or the 24? And that is a very difficult question for me to answer because I love wide angles. So when I use this lens, look at the front element of this thing. When I use that lens, 17 millimeter, but when I do a stitch like this, I will get about a 10 millimeter equivalent angle of view. I have 11 to 24 lens, and it's at its stitched and, you know, pano or shifted, I get a super wide image with super high resolution. And I love wide angle. Now I know people that do landscapes, they swear by the 24, and I use the 24 a lot. But you'll see me behind the scenes going around New York with this lens a lot on my camera, because here in New York, it's like buildings are, you know, really, really high up there. So it depends on what you're doing. I would say I would start out with this lens probably, unless you like super, super wide. And then if you find yourself, which I don't really carry my 11 to 24 that much, but when I do, I like, wow, what an incredible lens, but it's a big heavy lens, so I don't carry it as much. And also I know I can stitch and get an angle of view with this lens, so that lens kind of stays home more. But as I said before, now I can put my 82 millimeter ND filter on this lens, but this lens, I can't do that. It's over there, I can't reach it right now. I had, and I mentioned it in the field, a filter, ND filter, 10-stop ND filter that I bought, that with the mount was $500. And it was a very bad 10-stop, or color shift. It had really, really bad results in color. So if I was shooting black and white, I was fine. But with this system, let me, I think I have to rotate this to get to the position there. I have drop-in filters. And so I have now a 3, 6, 10. No, I don't think I have a 3. I can't remember. 6, 10, 15. No, I ordered the 15. It's on back order. So I have a 3. I have 3 of them. So I have 3, 6, and 10. So I'm waiting for the 15. I have the 15 on the screw mount. And I used it on this masterclass. So you have a drop-in on your EF lenses, which is really a a really nice benefit. And my son, who's doing car shooting and he's doing CGI, and he's doing 360s to do as he drops that 360 into the files to give reflections on the cars. He has purposely purchased an EF lens to go and shoot the panos because he can now do a drop-in filter because that, like that 11 to 24, I don't even know if there's a filter that you can put on the front of that, but with the drop-in, really simple. And so I think he had a choice of, well, I don't know if Canon's got an RF that's going to be wide enough for that yet. They will come up with them. But he's very happy with the drop-in system for his needs as a car shooter. And so this kind of rounds out this session on tilt-shift lens. Last thing. I get emails all the time. People say, well, yeah, you can afford a 10 tilt-shift lenses, and I can't afford that. And, I'm not trying to get people to run out and spend money on tilt-shift lenses necessarily. I'm giving you an option. And so if you say, this is about, I think it's been a while since I purchased it, you might get $400 into this, the nodal, and maybe it's $500 into the whole kit. And then you can do your panos. And that's a great way to start. Forget the tilt-shift lenses. The tilt-shift lenses just have, some advantages that are, I think, substantial to where I have 3 of them now. I would love to get the 50. Canon let me borrow it for a little while, the 50 tilt-shift. And then I was going to buy that lens, and then I would do a lot of portraits. So I went and bought the 90 tilt-shift, and I love it. And the 50 would be great to have too. But again, I can only carry so many lenses, and that goes back to this, what I said in the last segment, if you watched it, or if you didn't fast forward, is don't create a workflow that will make you frustrated and lose your enthusiasm to go out and do something. So if you go out and you do a pano and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so much work. I'm just going to put my wide angle on and go with it. Fine. I would say that is perfect for you. And as I get older, I might get rid of my tilt-shift lenses, and I might just say, I'm in a wheelchair and I'm on oxygen and I'm still taking pictures. I'm not going to probably be doing this. At some point, it's just too much work. But right now, I can still handle that workflow, and I love it in a way. So I will stick with it. But don't go out and create a workflow that makes you frustrated or you break the bank doing it. Don't go, if you, like my case, I go to my wife and say, honey, I need to do lens. And she goes, do you want a lens or do you need a lens? And I go, it's going to change my life. I guess I'm sure you've told your spouse that. It's going to change my life. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. But in this case, these tilt-shift lenses have been put to really good use in my career. And so with that, we're going to move on. I hope you enjoyed this segment and you get a little bit more clarity on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So we will continue to move on.